D&D is undoubtedly my favourite board game of all time, but it's sad to see that not many younger people are getting into it because there's so much opportunity for creativity and fun storytelling with younger audiences. In this video, part 2 of our series, A Guide to D&D for Young Beginners, I'll talk you through the things that you need to get started to play D&D. Hail and well met, and welcome to Dungeon Mastiff, a channel about creating original D&D content right here for you. If you end up liking this video, please consider hitting those like and subscribe buttons because it really helps out. And, speaking of the subscribe button, I have waited to get 20 subscribers to release this video, and we did that, plus one more. Shout out to Felipe Diaz, who I believe was our awesome 20th subscriber, but thank you so much for all your support, and keep up the good work in making maps, everyone. The note for today is to aim to hit 30 subscribers by December, and the ultimate goal is to hit 50 by the end of the year, and it would be really awesome to see that, so just make sure to subscribe. One final thing, I'll come true on my promise and open up the comment section to suggestions for new videos since we hit 20 subscribers. So if you want to see a particular map or a topic covered on this channel, just comment it down below and I'll try and do all of them over time. Okay, enough talking, let's get into A Guide to D&D for Young Beginners Part 2. What do I need to get started? D&D is a really cool game in that you only really need your imagination to get started and still can play a good game. Also, if you don't want to invest in a lot of materials yourself, you can join a local gaming group and they'll help you out with whatever you need, I'm pretty sure, because local gaming groups are really friendly, trust me. But if you really want to take it a bit further and play the game properly yourself, here are some resources that I highly recommend you get. Of the basic necessities, we have number 1, character sheets. One of the staples and most recognizable features of D&D is their iconic character sheet. The next episode of our series will tell you how to make an interesting character, so make sure to check that out. Also, you can download D&D 5e character sheets from the link in the description, and that'll send you to a D&D, the Wizards of the Coast website, where you can download character sheets from the link at the bottom of the page. But just a note on this is that to get started, you really don't need the whole character sheet. You just really need hit points, weapons, and some ability scores, and that'll get you going with, and all you need is just really imagination to fuel all that and get your D&D group really going. Number 2, dice. Again, a very iconic part of D&D is its uniquely shaped dice. In our last video, we talked about the difference between each dice, which includes a D4, a D6, a D8, a D10, a D12, and a D20. Just a recap on that, D, just like, the name of the dice is just D followed by a number. That number is how many faces the dice has, so a 6-sided dice or a standard dice, that'll be called a D6 because it has 6 sides. D4, D6, D8, D10, D12, D20, you can guess what they all mean. You can get dice from almost anywhere, but if you're looking for a cheap set, go somewhere online, but I would most recommend going to your local game stores to support it, and perhaps you can meet a gaming group there as well, because most local game stores usually have a gaming group, and like I said before, they're really inclusive, and they'll help you get started with whatever you need. Basic rules. D&D has a very different, unique, and exciting premise from all other board games, which is why an understanding of the basic rules is necessary in getting started. Again, the link for the free basic rules download will be in the description, and that'll again give you a D&D Wizards of the Coast article, but if you just scroll down a bit, it'll say 5e basic rules, and you just download that. But in my opinion, you only need these 3 things to really get started with playing D&D: character sheets, dice, the basic rules, and an imagination most of all. But next up, I'll talk to you about which D&D published resources are the best to buy, for example, like books and so forth. But like I said before, the staples of D&D just comes down to imagination, a couple of pens, and a dice. And that's all you really need to get started. You can find most of the information in these books and resources online, but if you're going to look into buying D&D resources, here are the absolute essentials that I recommend you get. Number 1, the Player's Handbook. The Player's Handbook is a 380-odd page long book with a wealth of information about the game. This information includes character creation guides, rules on how to play, and so much more, including magic, spells, and so forth. It's just got so much information, I couldn't go through all of it just now. The Player's Handbook is definitely a staple in any D&D section, as it'll help you out in both creating characters and running the game itself by telling you rules, and so forth. Basically, just get it. It's the best D&D book out there. I totally recommend getting it if you really want to play a good D&D game. Number 2, the Monster Manual. In addition to the Player's Handbook, I recommend getting the Monster Manual from a DM's perspective. There's so many monsters to choose from in that book, as well as expanded stat blocks, side information, and so forth, which can really help you in knowing how to run these monsters. These first 2 things are definitely a must-buy, and if you want monsters and cool stuff like that, I suggest checking out our Patreon page in the description, because we've got monsters there, we've got magic items and so forth, and it's just a really good help to D&D, to DMs in D&D, just the Monster Manual and our Patreon page as well, so just make sure to check that out. Number 3, the Dungeon Master's Guide. Finally, to complete the trilogy of essential books, I highly recommend, again from a DM's perspective, getting the Dungeon Master's Guide. I can't even begin to explain to you how much of a help this was to me when I first started dungeon mastering. It's crammed full of information about locations, histories, magic items, and so much more that relates to the Forgotten Realms. I'd even go so far as to say it's one of the most helpful tools out there for a starting DM, so I definitely recommend that you buy it. Number 4, the starter set. And finally, well, firstly I just wanted to say that there are 2 versions of the starter set available, the starter set and the essential kit. They both come with slightly different things, but the main difference is that the starter set comes with a small adventure called The Lost Mine of Phandelver, and it's a bit older, it was released a little while ago, whilst the essential kit is newer and it comes with an adventure called The Dragons of Icespire Peak. They're both really handy in getting some pre-made characters and serves as an excellent first taste of D&D because the adventures are really well made and, really easy to follow from a DM's perspective and a player's perspective, and they're really intriguing. But I recommend you buy either the Essentials kit or the starter kit, and that's just my opinion. But you can really get started with mostly anything, but those 2, one of those 2 and the 3 books I mentioned before are probably the ones you'll want. Alright, now that we've talked about the absolute essentials, let's now dive into some additional items that will really bring together your D&D setup. So number 1 of the additional items is a DM screen. A DM screen can be really useful for keeping a DM, keeping all of their information secret from the players. As well as the default screen, there are plenty of cool unique ones online, and remember, you can always make your own. I've tried making my own screen, it really looks cool and it helps me during my games a lot. Number 2, tabletop mats. This one is kind of unnecessary, but when you pair it with miniatures, a tabletop mats can really bring a game to life in envisioning it in a 3D way. They allow you to lay out or draw the spaces your characters will come into, and that can really be the final touch in making a D&D game truly awesome. Number 3, miniatures. Again, miniatures are just an accessory, but there are several ways that you can use them to your advantage. For one, they're highly customizable, and if you just laminate printouts and stick them to a stand, they're really cheap too. But when you really get into playing with mats and miniatures, it just brings the whole game to a whole new level. Number 4, finally, spell cards. If you're playing a spellcasting role like a wizard, sorcerer, or warlock, spell cards are really handy for keeping what all of your spells do right on hand. There's been many times for me when I've had to hold up a D&D game by flipping through the player's handbook for spells, so spell cards can come in really handy sometimes, as well as being really cheap. You just have to print them out and, cut them up and stick them next to you. And finally for this video, I'll just talk you through playing D&D online. There are a bunch of neat softwares out there, but of the ones I recommend is really Roll20, which is a free TTRPG software that's easy to sign up to and use. Roll20 has come in really handy because playing D&D has never been harder during the pandemic, and is a really affordable way to play across distances. If you're looking for something more comprehensive, however, I suggest checking out Foundry VTT, which has a bunch of cool new features like lighting and a new cool software. But it does have a sign-up fee of about $50, so those are my main options for you. There's also a bunch of different ones like Owlbear Rodeo and so forth, but those 2 I found to be the most reliable TTRPG softwares. So, those are my suggestions on what you need to get started to play D&D. I hope you enjoyed this video, so if you're still watching, you must have enjoyed it. So please take a second to subscribe, like the video, and leave a comment about a video suggestion down below. Also, we would really appreciate you checking out our Patreon page, where we post really cool stuff weekly. Also, the links for part 1 and part 3 of this series are down in the description below. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next video of the series, where we'll talk about how to make an interesting character. Bye!